the most important things you can and make it sound well on the organ.
And people are still writing music for the organ. I know NPR has a program called Pipe Dreams, and organists are not well known like guitarists or drummers or who are kind of the shining stars these days.
There are a few, and it depends on if you're talking about church music or concert music. There's a few concert organists, even younger ones. One that comes to mind very quickly is Cameron Carpenter, who has made it his whole goal to introduce the organ to people outside of church. Yeah. Yep. And so he's trying to bring the organ into bring it to the normal public.
If someone is interested in knowing more about the organ, sometimes churches have had classes for some of the children who are interested in knowing more about the organ. How do people find out more?
Jordan, I think you didn't you go to something in Oneonta that was for students, piano students that are interested in the organ?
It was an AGO program. Yeah. I think it was called Pipes and Pedals. Yeah. So it was, they had a lunch there, and then quite a few members of the AGO showed it off, and you got to try the organ with them.
The AGO was really pushing for a while, and they also had several name organists that would go around and demonstrate the instrument and do like mini programs for the kids.
Because even just getting into the organ case and looking back there is kind of exciting. It's kind of mysterious. And then some children have never heard this music played before because they've not been in churches. And to hear it for the first time and to hear it rattle, This instrument is kind of challenging. What makes it different?
Well, what makes it different is when you couple the two manuals together, you're essentially playing two keyboards at once. And so when you press down the key, you have to play both keys from different manuals.
And this is a tracker?
It's a tracker, mechanical action instrument. So
and what makes a tracker?
When you press the key, you are actually engaging the valve that opens the wind into the pipes, as opposed to an electric action instrument where you press the key and it just sends an electrical a message to a switch somewhere to open the valve, which is much easier to play.
So your family must take a lot of pride when they come to church and you're at the organ.
Yes, and also my siblings have expressed interest in maybe starting lessons.
You played for some friends and from some church members this past summer. How did you put that repertoire together? How did you choose what you wanted to play? Or did Dave choose it for you?
Well, most of it was already music we've worked on before, and so put together a nice, well-rounded program.
You didn't play anything by the Doors or Chicago, or it was a classical program.
Yes.
The use of the pipe organ in church, we've talked about the fact that many churches are choosing to go a different direction. How does this influence the choice of an instrument? How does it influence how people worship? Or does it really lead in worship and support worship and the music in a different way than a keyboard, an electronic keyboard would?
Yes, it does. The organ still has a lot more impact as far as leading large groups in singing or just being able to project enough volume. Even keyboards with all of their electronics and amplification and everything doesn't have, for some reason, the same effect. And I have nothing against guitars, but guitars are absolutely awful for leading congregational singing, especially if the guitar player doesn't sing. Yeah. I've actually, recently I was at a funeral where the music was provided by the guitar, and the audience was expected to sing a hymn, and nobody knew what to do. And the guitar player apologized that he did not sing.
They couldn't pick up the melody from the guitar. It doesn't have the volume that would be needed. Yeah. So how do you divide your time, Jordan? You play all these different instruments. You can't practice all of them every day. So how do you prioritize what you want to do day by day?
Well, since I've pretty much decided on trombone as my main instrument, so that takes the majority of my practice time. And then the organ tends to be whenever I have free time to, at least when I'm home, to get down here to the organ. And then at school, it's pretty much, I do it late at night because that's when the organ room is free.
Yeah.
So, because there's so many people trying to practice. And so.
Well, I congratulate you on the challenge of learning this instrument. It takes a lifetime to master it. You haven't mastered it yet, have you, Dave? Well, if you practice more, perhaps.
I know. Every day if I practiced.
Right. Now, where do you play?
I play at Christ the King Presbyterian in Spencer.
Okay.
We have a very nice instrument. It's a small church, maybe congregation of 40, but they really love music, and we have a nice choir, and just the music program's wonderful.
Yeah.
So
And is that where you then practice your organ skills?
most of the time. Quite often now, my practicing pretty much depends on where I'm going to be playing.
Right.
For example, I just not long ago did a program at St. Mark's in Candor. They were raising money to restore their organ. So that required a lot of practice, just getting used to the instrument, and also because it needs restoration, figuring out what played and what didn't.
Right. Yes,
So that was the challenge.
Yeah, because sometimes there's a cipher where a note just won't go off.
Oh, yeah, there were many.
And that's one of the things where, again, it's a complex instrument, and if everything works right, it's grand, and if it doesn't, it can be really frustrating, I'm sure.
I've always wanted disclaimer signs so that I could hold up and say, it's not my fault.
Now here's Jordan Dove at the keyboard of the pipe organ of First Presbyterian Union Church in Owego. This week on Encounter, we've been talking with 20-year-old Jordan Dove, a music education major at the State University of New York at Fredonia. And we've been talking with David Jackson, the organist at Christ the King Presbyterian Church in Spencer, New York. David is Jordan's organ teacher. Our thanks to Owego's First Presbyterian Union Church for their hospitality today, and to Doug Moore, who ran camera for this interview. Now, on behalf of the Broome County Council of Churches, I'm Jeff Kellam, hoping that in the coming week, you'll be gentle with people and with yourself.